This is a parliamentary sitting week which changes things completely in this place because our guests come and visit us right here in the studio, and our Wednesday regulars are Joel Fitzgibbon, MP for Hunter. Nice to have him back, Joel. And Josh Frydenberg, Liberal MP for Kooyong in Melbourne. Good to see you guys back here, Josh.
Thanks, Tim.
Nice to have you guys in. First off, electoral funding. Lots of fuss around Parliament this morning about what changes are in store for how much money political parties and independents get paid to run their campaigns. What's wrong with an increase, and are you at all uncomfortable with it?
You don't want to talk about electoral funding, Tim. It's very boring.
No, go ahead.
Those who watch your side are not the least bit interested.
Stick on it, John.
Nice try.
We agree, don't we? We agree to start off the program.
Well, I just thought, the major parties seem to have a bipartisan view, so I thought it might be a bit boring for you.
And Rob Oakeshott has the view on this program that the fix is in. Is he right?
Look, Tim, I leave these things for the political apparatchiks at the party level. I concentrate on public policy and things that really matter to my electorate. I'll leave the apparatchiks to sort it out. I mean, we are in a very healthy democracy. Democracy costs money. We've always had systems of public funding. And the major parties seem to have come to some agreement about the rising costs and the additional costs of the more stringent disclosure laws. So it's a tough one, mate. I know people won't like it, but I'm staying right out of it.
Josh Frydenberg?
Look, I'm very comfortable with these negotiations between the major parties. I mean, I don't want Australia to go down the path of the United States, Tim, where, private groups are spending not just hundreds of millions, now more than $1 billion on elections over there. We don't have that, so government funding is an important component of our system. I mean, Rob Oakeshott knows there's an election on September 14. He wants to pretend to take the high moral ground, but this sort of funding for major political parties has been going since Federation.
It is true, Tim, can I say, that you don't run for office in the United States unless you're quite wealthy. And we don't want to go down that path in Australia. Whether we've got the balance here, I don't know. But again, democracy is expensive. We want to give everyone access to democracy. And as Josh has indicated, this also applies to minor players in our political system. And you want to be able to give them the opportunity.
OK, the Rob Oakeshott interview we've done is coming up, by the way. But if we don't want to go down the path of the United States, then why do we insist on a higher non-disclosure ceiling for companies making donations? Why not reduce it to the $1,000 that John Faulkner in Labor and others are recommending?
Well, John Faulkner has been trying since he was the minister responsible to get it down to $1,000, but we haven't been able to get it through the Parliament. Politics is the art of compromise. Now, it's currently, $11,000 or $12,000.
$12,100.
We're getting it down to $5,000. We'd all prefer it to be down to $1,000, but particularly in this hung Parliament, you do what you can achieve.
Well, clearly you wouldn't all prefer for it to be down to $1,000 because somebody's voting against that fact or pushing against it. Not you. If it was $1,000, you'd vote for it.
I don't care what it is, Tim.
But you just said you'd support $1,000.
No, $1,500, $100. Look, it makes no difference to me. I'm prepared to be absolutely open about who donates money to me. It got me into trouble at one point, you might recall. It was something I never hid. We should be very open about who donates to our campaigns. I think it's very, very important. So to me personally, I don't care where the level is. Of course, coming down too low would mean huge transaction costs, which of course is partly the justification for this increase in public funding. Yeah, well, the lower you bring it, the higher the transaction cost, the more paperwork involved, and as I understand it.
But Tim, can I say there's another issue here? In Joel skating over it, the fact is that the unions are the bankrollers of the Labor Party. They are. $30-40 million. Remember the so-called work choices election? Well, the fact is they are giving you tens of millions of dollars. We get our money from small business, from mums and dads. No longer does big business bankroll one party.
No,
it's a fact of the matter is we do not have the rivers of gold that come from the union movement to the Labor Party. We don't have that in a coalition. So this is an attempt by lowering the thresholds, because we don't want to lower the thresholds. They're lowering the thresholds. They're trying to make it more difficult for small business people, for people to give donations to the coalition.
You've worked very hard at maintaining your integrity in these interviews, and you've almost thrown it out the window. in 1 year. I mean,
You're going to man, not the ball now, are
who
you?
out there that watches your site, Tim, doesn't believe that big business doesn't tip big amounts of money?
They don't
into the
anymore.
Liberal
They
Party?
don't anymore.
Check the last disclosure.
Well, the biggest donation's gone to the Greens, so that's the great irony.
So
of
would
it.
you support a $1,000?
No.
You wouldn't?
No, I
but
would.
this is the problem, Tim. We wanted 1,000. John Faulkner wants 1,000. Again, I'm happy with $100. I don't care, but we weren't able to get it through the Parliament.
Okay, and what is the right limit then, John?
I was very happy with the current limit as it is, but you know these are discussions that have taken place between
Josh
parties.
thinks that people should be able to donate up to $10,000 and not have to disclose.
It's actually 12,100,
but round the thing. You know, we know that at 12 they can donate 10 without having to disclose. This, I think, identifies a big difference between the Labor Party and the Conservatives.
Okay.
Now you laugh, making me laugh a bit.
Newspaper speculation this morning. Got to ask you about this. The Daily Telegraph says that John Faulkner's opposition in caucus to this is part of a new stir for Kevin Rudd movement and go back to a perhaps one last leadership bid before.
Tell us the truth, Joel. Tell us. He's crossing his toes, Tim. He's crossing his toes.
Well, it's just rubbish, Tim, and I do suspect there's a bit of paranoia around the place, and you might attribute it to that. But there are no plans. We had that stoush 2 months ago now, and it's all over.
Absolutely done.
Absolutely done and dusted.
Okay, the ASIO revelations on Four Corners on Monday night suggesting the plans for the building were leaked. We think that now occurred some time ago, not recently, perhaps back at the time that you would have had a better idea of what was going on.
Well, I said yesterday, Tim, that being a defence minister brings both advantages and disadvantages. It gives me the knowledge of an insider, but the responsibility of not sharing things that are highly secret. But look, these are allegations only. We don't know what is fact and what is not fact.
And you
but
don't
if
know?
No, I do not know. But if this intrusion did occur, it's a very, very great concern to all of us.
What do you think, John?
Well, I'm very concerned about these reports, and as George Brandis, our Shadow Attorney General, has said, the Prime Minister's comments that these were inaccurate were false, and that's after he's received a briefing. Anthony Byrne has blown the whistle on this government's cuts to ASIO and ONA, and I'd like to know whether Joel Fitzgibbon supports Anthony Byrne in this, because what Anthony Byrne has said is the government's cuts to ASIO are disgraceful, they're his words, and completely unacceptable. Now, coming on the back of cutting our defence spending to the lowest level since 1938, coming on the back of 40,000 unauthorised arrivals, now the cuts to intelligence and security operations, which have actually been labelled by your own caucus colleague as disgraceful. I'm concerned that this government's dropped the ball at a time when we can't afford to.
Those were quite extraordinary comments from Anthony Byrne. What was your sense when you heard them, John?
Well, I was a bit surprised by the robust nature of his comments, but he's a conscientious chair and a conscientious and hard-working MP. Look, I see the Prime Minister had a counter view about the funding, so you've got to go back to the budgets.
But do you agree with him? Do you agree with Anthony?
This is what I do agree with.
Yep.
Growth in cyber, for example, is exponential.
Yep.
It's hard to measure, but we know it's huge.
It's exploding.
How much do you spend in this space? Well, how long is a piece of string? I don't know. But I do know that these are serious threats, and our cyber security is as important a platform as our air, war and sea assets. Air, land and sea assets, and we've got to invest heavily. Now, how much? Obviously, there are limits to how much you can spend in any area of public.
But if there have been cuts, which this report actually found, and the ASIO submission, which is available on the website, says that for 2011-12 there was a $16 million cut. Was that wrong to cut it that amount?
Look, the Prime Minister has contested that there have been cuts.
But if there's been a cut,
and I haven't had a chance to study the detail, the only comment I will make is this: we into the future, from today and into the future, we need to be spending more on our national security, not less.
So we do not have the efficiency dividend for ASIO?
Look, John, who's the interviewer here, John?
But that's a fair question.
When I'm crook, John, you've got to spare time.
But that's a fair question.
That's a very broad-ranging question. We need to be spending as close as we can in proportionate terms to what our friends and allies are spending, and obviously the United States will spend a lot more, but in proportionate terms we should be making our contribution. and as best we can, proportionate to the risk. And the risk is very, very great.
Okay, last question for you both, particularly to you, Josh. We've had National Party Senator John Williams in here this morning expressing concern about the cost of the paid parental leave scheme proposed by Tony Abbott. In all the circumstances, are you absolutely sure that Tony Abbott's paid parental leave scheme is affordable?
Yes, I am. And that the Tony Abbott's paid parental leave scheme is a policy that the Coalition will take to the next election. We've had these debates in the party room. Tony Abbott's made it very clear he has the support of his colleagues for it. It goes right to the heart of workforce participation, Tim. And the point here is that Australia is falling behind its fellow OECD countries in the number of women in the workforce, and this is an important step forward.
Are you concerned that the tax being imposed on big business will come out of the political donations you would have ordinarily received?
Now, that's a cheeky sideline. We'll leave it there, though. Thank you for coming in. Joel Fitzgibbon, Josh Frydenberg,
Thanks, Tim.
as always.
Thanks,
The
Josh.
Light.